Okay. Hello, everyone. Okay, voice should be nice now. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. Tolerance brings global emotional stability. And so, what is the necessity of patience for us as human beings? I find life to be an interesting situation. I find that as many beings who are on the same planet, I feel each human being has an access to the planet that is very personal. So what that means is you have a personal relationship with life and you have an impersonal relationship with life. The impersonal relationship doesn't matter what your person does, it stays the same. So the world is the world regardless of kind of what you do. You know, it's like the planet rotates around the sun, orbits around the sun. Now, does me believing in different things change that? It doesn't necessarily. So, in some sense, the impersonal dimensions of our existence are objective and they're kind of mutual. But the inner realm is very important because it means even though we are 8 billion human beings on a rock in the middle of nowhere, each human being is perceiving a different humanity, is perceiving a different value system to what it means to even be human. And so I was looking at this and I realized that a certain, you can say, portion of the modern society is going towards the future. A certain portion of the future, like the modern society, I find is trying to preserve to the past. What that means is every civilization has had to confront changing times. And when things change, you go towards what is more real for you. And if the past is more real, you will stay there. But if the future is more real, you'll start walking. And so, because we're in our personal domains, that means we are not a purely rational civilization, which is kind of strange news for the scientific mind. The scientist conducts the most fascinating experiments. A lot of funding goes towards it, you know? For example, CERN in Switzerland. Europe, of course, has more funding of scientific endeavors than the West. Now, the greatest, let's say the most accurate scientific result and finding is still being brought to a society, a civilization that does not just acknowledge reality, but acknowledges imagination. And oftentimes I've thought, what is imagination? And imagination is the world that is present behind your eyes. And what that means is reality is given, imagination is put there. Imagine everything you imagined became real. So now imagine you had imagined this world and it had become real and you had forgot that you had imagined it and so you felt it was given. You felt it was already here, imagine. You know, the civilization is not purely rational because there are emotions and that's what I'm trying to get to. And I found at least in my eyes one of the most important discoveries of what the human civilization needs. More than it needs rational truth, more than it needs precise methods, it needs an inner sort of maintenance of emotions. And some that means we may become, right now I feel we're a species that has mastered the objective realm. We have not mastered the subjective realm because we think we are it. Do you know? Imagine an advanced human being. You ask him, what is this world? The being says, I will show you its objective components. and you see its objective components. You see how it is objectively here, how particles have become this. And then the person says, now I will tell you of the subjective realms and how, as you can observe an object, any object in front of you, I want you to look at that object, anything. It could be your phone, it could be whatever's in front of you, a pen on the table. Like, look at that object. You see how you have access to at least your view on that object is starting from a certain position. So it's like you can see an object from different degrees. You can start just walking around an object and perceiving it from various angles. And I find that we can have the same experience with our subjectivity, with our subjects. We're not just observers of objective reality, we're also observers of a personal subjective reality. Now, that personal subjective reality requires the free will to update it. What that means is, unless you take a step out into a new direction, the reality is going to remain the same. I found out pretty much that emotional stability is what the species requires. And emotional stability is not per se about rationality or irrationality. It's about how the creature, how the human being finds a contentment with its inner realm and its outer realm. You can say survival strangely is a design that will keep us like we won't feel content until the expectation occurs. However, every person's psychology has its own kind of like a plant in a garden. It's rooted in the soil differently. It's kind of strange. We are in the same world, yet we are each in different worlds. If we seek emotional stability, it means the relationship of our inner realm and outer realm is rhythmic. It's honestly very fascinating. We human beings are living two lives simultaneously. We just don't realize it, and we think it's all one life, and then it becomes mysterious to us. Anytime you see multiple dimensions as one dimension, you create mystery. I feel many people will not be a stranger to this idea that in many yogic practices, meditative practices, the wisdom traditions throughout the ages, their intention was that when the ripples of the pond settle, as Rumi would say, you see your the moon and the stars mirrored in your being. So what does that mean? That means there are ways that the internal realm, the inner realm, the subjective realm can be conducted where the objective realm does not feel obstructed from its own process. So what does that mean? That means I can see this tree. Okay, I can see this tree in front of me right now, outside the window of where I am. When I look at this tree, I see it has a sort of objective realm, objectivity, and its objectivity is like color. It's like it's just there, it's given. Do you know, it's like how many people are trying to explain the color red? You know, it's just, at some point, you just accept the image for what is being. So I see objectively, this is just a tree. Now I know back in the day there were people who, for example, the pantheists, they would worship trees. They thought they saw God in that tree. And when you ask, how is God in that tree? You see the objective realm is kind of very it's singular. But when it comes to you seeing God in that tree, how come one person saw God in that tree, someone didn't? I'll tell you a story after this, but like, how is it that someone didn't? And the idea is that we are the creators of the language we use to define our realm. Ultimately, what it means is the outside is attributeless. The objective realm doesn't have that much of a, how can I tell you? It's like when you look at an object on the table, it's like, does that object have any sort of meaning to itself? No. An object is an object to itself. But the human position is very unique, that it's an objective phenomena that is subjectively receiving itself. To yourself, you're a subject. To others, you're an object. Now, if you really look at that subject that you are and you remain still and silent, again, like the ripples of the pond settling, you'll suddenly notice that the outer and inner are kept segmented. It's like you have two eyes that you can choose to see the same, or you can choose to see it differently. What that means is the human body walks in a singular dimension, but the human mind walks in multiple. Therefore, to study your mind means to become sensitive of the design of life. I ultimately consider myself a designer. Everything even I say, everything I see, there is a design to it. And that design falls or can fall into various contexts of meaning. A person can look at a triangle and feel it's just a shape. A person can look at a triangle and feel it's like the shadows moving, like that. Like a person can see many things in this life. But I find the relationship of handling intelligence in this sector has to do with a kind of balance of the emotional reality. So what that means is the world behind your eyes and the world in front of your eyes are no longer at war. No longer there is, you want to change the external realm and the external realm wants to change you internally, I mean. So what does that mean? Let's start with a difficult circumstance. I'll tell you the story in a second, but just to get this across, or maybe the story will get it across. I'll tell you. There's this story that comes to us from the Islamic tradition during those times in the 6th century. And there was a man who goes and sees that there's a bunch of people idol worshiping this tree. He pretty much sees a bunch of people that see this tree and they start kind of like they're worshiping the tree. Now, Islam is a monotheistic religion. What that means is there is no other God than the one and only true God that is never born and can never die and is within everything and without everything. So this dude, this guy, this Muslim man, he sees a bunch of people worshiping this tree, and he's like, "What is this?" He sincerely is like, "This is foolishness." And he goes there and he tells the people, he tells them that you guys have to stop worshiping this tree. And he gets an axe and he's about to cut it down. And the people are like, "Don't touch your God, don't do it." And this guy's about to cut the tree. Then the story gets more intense, and they say Satan, in a human form, appears to this man, and the Satan says, "I won't let you cut this tree." And the man is like, "Who are you?" And as the man realizes this is, for example, the intention of you can say fallen desire. And so, anyways, Shaitan looks at the man and says, "I won't let you cut the tree." They get into a fist fight. They get into a physical confrontation. And what happens is the man beats Satan, like he punches that Satan in human form, and in some sense he becomes victorious. And he has the axe in his hand. He's about to cut the tree, and this is part of like the moral of the story too, where it's as if they say, at least in the religious mindset, that a person who's drawn towards evil is like as if influenced by Satan. right? So they say it's as if evil attacks your character when it cannot openly control you. So what happens is right before this guy cuts the tree, the Satan in human form looks at the guy and says, "Hey, hey, stop! Listen, I'll give you 3 gold coins every night. I'll put them behind your door if you cut this tree. I promise." And in that moment, something strange happens. The guy stops cutting the tree and he's like, "Yo, 3 gold coins? That's a lot. And he says, "Okay, they better be there." And the guy leaves. He doesn't cut the tree. And the people are like, "Yo," they start worshiping the tree. The guy goes home. Nighttime comes. He's waiting. He suddenly hears a knock outside his door. He goes and he sees there's 3 gold coins. He's like, "Whoa." He's like, "Cha-ching." And so what happens is the next night it comes, and there's another knock, and he opens and he sees the door and he sees there's 3 gold coins. Then the third night comes, and he sees there's no gold coins, and he's like, "Okay, this is messed up. I'm gonna go cut this tree." And the guy gets his axe and he goes there. He sees the worshippers around the tree, and suddenly a Satan in human form appears, and Satan says, I won't let you cut this tree." And they get into a fight as before. But this time, the same kind of character, archetype of evil, the same character looks at them, defeats the man. It's like his strength is more than this guy. It's like before they fought, the man won. This time, Satan wins. And the guy is shocked. And the guy says, "How is it that before when I was fighting you, I was stronger than you? How is it that you're suddenly in like 3 days way stronger than me?" And this is the moral of the story, to be honest. He says, Satan comes to him and says, "Because before you were doing it for your truth, because it was true, it was your truth that this tree should be cut. But then it was your desire of character. So it's like the second time you came to cut the tree, you wanted it for yourself. But when you wanted to cut it first time, you wanted it for the overall." So in other words, it's a suggestion of the more personal, you can say, the more an action is, you can say, an action of desire, the more it is justified only based on your inner realm, only based on how you see things as a human being. You know, it's kind of a fascinating privilege to realize there is more than your eyes can contain. It's an incredible feeling. For me, the unknown is not just like an adrenaline rush if kind of feeling. It's, for me, it's novelty in motion. It's living novelty. Divinity is living novelty. In today's world, we have, like a piece of cake, cut the world into pieces. Like a chunk, like a cake, full cake. We've cut it into pieces. We have cut it into pieces by each extracting our meaning from the world. Ultimately, I think without tolerance, structures cannot be built. What that means is when you're trying to move a heavy object into a building, if there's nobody holding the door and you haven't planned for, it's as if without that tolerance of someone holding the door for you, you cannot go in. So what it means is that the advancement of our civilization very keenly depends. It depends on the tolerance, the simplicity. We need people's simple selves also to participate in society. Because the more complex you think you are, whether it's with you're trying to kind of appreciate the luxury of the mind or the body. You can say the luxury of the body is, for example, the guys on a yacht. The billionaire is kind of enjoying walking on that transparent bridge, glass bridge over the ocean on that beach, you know? So that's an objective luxury, but it's in turn like the luxury for the mind is actually how far you see. you know? That means there could be a person who has accessed more experiential dimensions of perception than a person who just objectively has accessed the unique position. Now, of course, things are different. It's like life is not something where you wake up, you program it, and then the program just happens in accordance to exactly what you programmed. Our free will is in a symbiosis with the unknown factors of the laws of nature. So even if man has a soul and this soul wanted to move, let's say consciousness was somehow something of another dimension moving this in this dimension. Believe it or not, if the world, the more the world appears as a simulation, the more truth is going to be in silence and stillness. Tolerance is the most important. It's a gift. I can tell you, I haven't mastered it. I mean, there's been moments of my life where if I could go back in time, I'd scold myself. But like, imagine you saw what happened in the future. You got a time machine. You came back, and when you saw how people were living, you had a much more tolerance. What that means is like when you understand something, you automatically are comfortable with it, right? And the reason man has this sort of irrationality that arises due to emotional imbalance is because our certainty is based on an objective kind of process, but really we're discovering life to be more than an objective process. So the person is seeing something unknown in their moment of experience, and then they're like, how do I know all of this, right? So that knowing has to change in meaning. That means know thyself. Perhaps was to some people it meant look at yourself in the mirror, or look at your mind in the mirror. Look from with the eyes of your mind. Look at yourself in the mirror. But I can say that there are always. How can I tell you? It's as if it's a kind of exchange. It's honestly like a symbiosis. It's like knowledge builds up the implication of the unknown. Then through unknown experiences, the implication of knowledge is built up. I don't know why, guys. There's this. I think it's because it's something that I've recently found. It was in the drawer a lot, but I want to read an entry from a book that I wrote in 2015. It's not complete the book, but let me see. Okay, so this entry is from what do you call it? It's from something I wrote in 2015 from a book called The Source of Language. It's divided into like these poetic, philosophical kind of entries, right? So this is the 10th entry. It's called Live in a Reality of Allowance. So I'm going to read it first, and then there's three quotes in front of every entry, which I'm going to read at the end. Entry 10. Live in a reality of allowance. Live until you are the beyond. Spend enough time with yourself until the truth of all nature is found here and now. Who are you being right now? Ask this until all have become just like now. Our civilization is just a single brick for the greater civilizations to come. You're more than an accumulation of memory. Do not doubt the divinity of the moment that comes and goes on its own. Confront the true nature of all phenomena in this universal sector you have spontaneously sprouted into manifest form within. What is more beautiful? What is more beautiful, a field of flowers or the self-awareness of the field of activity of the knower within that can never be worded? A purposeless purpose is grand in a world of cyclical ignorance. Nature is not wrong. It is just that if the moment was called destiny, it would know better. You are the source of language. No mask can hide your undoable. No mask can hide your undoable, unified nature. Wash your face in a morning that has always been dawning now. You are a moment of being. Never forget it. Have you noticed you live each day once? Because we're looking at time and space through a segmented categorical evaluation, we have to wonder in quotations how and in quotations what is the philosophy of language not revealing about direct experience that many mystics, yogis, Zen masters, Buddhas, and just that inspiration has revealed. Do you see? We must realize, are we treasure revealers of a material mountain like world, or are we treasure revealers of the essence and the origin of the spark of our consciousness that the moment we open our eyes in the morning, we have opened all existence into being? It's no little thing being alive. So it's as if each day lives and dies. The moment you open your eyes, it's as if a being has come into the world. And the moment you close it, it's as if this being has gone. Do you see? And so it seems rather than us just living one life, each time we blink, we're living a new universe of thought. We are always a new view of our ancient conception. So we can say that the ability of the imagination is a multiversal, natural, intuitive presence. That once you realize the nature of your reality and you are sincere and have, selfless devotional service to the absolute and the core of what you are, the world will open up, not just the waves of seas and prophecies. Every moment is a reunion with the love of the cosmos that is manifested into an intelligence that can look in the mirror and be like, yo, I'm not a person alone in this world. I am a universe happening. That part's in quotations. That experiential vastness is beyond the poet's pen. Who we are in an absolute transcendental intelligence of an emptiness, who we are is an absolute transcendental intelligence of an emptiness that was already being what it was. Life is easy if you don't make it hard. So the quotes at the beginning are Hafez, run my dear. This is a poet from 700 years ago. He says, run my dear from anything that may not strengthen your precious budding wings. Rabindranath Tagore, he says, love is the only reality and it is not a mere sentiment. It is the ultimate truth that lies at the heart of creation. Terence McKenna, what we call reality is in fact nothing more than a culturally sanctioned and linguistically reinforced hallucination. So yeah, guys. So that's my whole thing, right? Like, I noticed that we're all trying to fit into this external puzzle only to realize that the puzzle pieces are interpreted from within. An advanced civilization obviously would mean, like, as the civilization gets more advanced, it's getting more dimensions, more layers, more advanced and sophisticated ways it's getting acknowledged, you know? There has to be a freedom. I remember. I call it inner allowance and or an internal authorization. So I will tell you guys a personal story about myself that it's not just strength that people need to achieve things. It's not just resources. It's a rhythm of co-creative involvement. So it's as if you, like a chess game, take a few steps, move a piece, and then the unknown moves a piece. Then your knowledge moves in this unknown system, then the unknown system moves your knowledge. Then your knowledge moves in the system, then the unknown system moves your knowledge. Now, if you are a person who is not content with the objective realm, you are, how would I say it? It's like from 2000, starting from 2000, after 2011, like something I had an experience that kind of shifted my whole character. um, from 2000 I think after 2011 to 2006. Okay, here, let me say it like this. From 2014 to 2016, those 2 years of my life, 2014 were when these Mr. Within talks were born. I could tell you I had a relationship with my intuition that in every physical moment I went, internally I knew if there was an authorization to continue or not. It was like having access to an intuitive feedback loop before before entering any situation, right? So you see, the ancient Greeks acknowledged the concept called the logos. The logos is a very important concept. Nowadays, it's kind of pushed into drawers, and it's in dusty books. But I'll tell you this: the concept of the logos was the inner guiding voice that many philosophers, at least in that ancient Greek kind of mindset, perceived as the spirit of the universal sector. So when I say, for example, advanced communicators, those people who are familiar with my other talks, and how the advanced communicator is an advanced communication of the universal sector, it means the movement behind your eyes becomes it becomes into your attention. It's like most people don't acknowledge the content of their mind fully. They think the content of their mind is just their sensory perception. They don't wonder what's happening with all these sensory perceptions that are being accumulated. How are they kind of being rendered into my free will? I feel manifestation, physical manifestation, is a glove. And what's moving this, the hand that's in this glove, is not of a physical origin purely. That means really you cannot have a singular dimension without a multidimensional one. That means you cannot, or let me say it like this: there's two ways to consider the singular. Anything that is singular, whether you think it's just all one God, or it's all oneness, or it's all energy, or it's all atoms, any sort of kind of fabric of oneness, or let's say a singular dimension, it's just purely material. This singular dimension has two ways, I find, at least philosophically, philosophers, the pilots of consciousness, can navigate through. In some sense, you can say one way is you study the relationship of zero to the number one. So that's very important. I tell people you got to be able to live simply to also experience complex things. you know so what that means is most people have a sort of opinion about chaos and order, and based on their reaction, response, and experiences, their morality takes shape. But I'm kind of saying that we imagine become a species that is no longer afraid of chaos, that is no longer horrified by the order kind of moving the wrong way. We understand chaos and order are members of the civilization. That means when the human declaration, when the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was written, that was universal. It doesn't matter if you're a human being on Earth, if you're a human being on the moon. It means it doesn't matter if you're a bad guy or a good guy, the freedom is there. And that's the kind of, you can say, one of the most important archetypes of society, that it doesn't matter if you're a good or a bad person, you are allowed to be here. The issue is that how much does the individual person take your responsibility to comprehend the system and to see the advancement in it. By the way, welcome guys in the chat section. And thanks. Yeah, life is sometimes, you can say the subjective realm is a glove. Honestly, I'm saying there has to be a playfulness with the intensity of how things change. That means really the only reason me and you are experiencing life kind of going forward is because of change. And change Usually, it seems, at least, it shocks people. Objectively, I can understand, but subjectively, I can't. Because when I look at every person, I know it's just there. I know how advanced people's minds are. Because your mind has been processing information, how things are informed. You have been looking. Now, regardless of what you have read, regardless of what you have done, I remember giving a talk, I think it was called Kindness of Invisible Hands. We have to, at least all those who feel drawn, at least to my perspective, um, emotional stability first. Every human being is reacting to emptiness subconsciously, which means, regardless of the most comfortable and stable person you see, their psychology can be prone to an existential crisis in any moment. An existential crisis is when your level of experiencing life does not match to the internal existence you want to have. Do you know? So you got to see it like this. People don't just uh people don't just, fail other people's expectations. They fail their own expectations. And what do you do when you fail your own expectations? You judge your expectation. You reverse engineer. So pretty much all human beings are either engineering going forth, they're kind of adding new dimensions to their psychology, or they are reverse engineering. They're wondering why the building blocks are there in the first place, you know. That was the thing when I was first kind of introduced to knowledge, and especially philosophy. It seemed to me like I remember reading this thing like philosophers, they back in the day, they would sleep till noon, right? They weren't the early risers. They weren't the ones kind of igniting the gears of civilization early in the morning, you know. That means they were more interested in internal advancement than external advancement. You know, there was a time where I thought, how does the Dalai Lama have so much compassion? Like he doesn't know these people, but he still has compassion for them. And I realized because he has a universal comprehension of the human position. You see, we got to understand that at some point, culture became a larger part of our attention. A culture is a lens, because we're so. I mean, like obviously, the human being is a social entity. It's a social creature. That means you are not just defined by who you are to yourself. You're also defined by who you are in society. You know how much you choose to move around in this lifetime of yours. This need for tolerance and emotional stability really, I when I think about 8 billion people, I'm like, holy shit, like, excuse me, but like, excuse my language, but I'm like, holy shit, like, how do 8 billion people suddenly build an advanced civilization? Like, that's the problem. That's the grand Rubik's cube, you know, of our of our time. I think this is what's happening. Most people are acting first, then observing. I feel they should observe first, then act. That observation means that your mind is confronting a physical situation and is looking at its first attempt to interpret the situation. If a person cannot be okay with being wrong, they can't be right. If you cannot in certain moments experience the lessening of the life force, and also the increase of it's like the increase of the life force will, you got to move both wings as a bird. You can't just move one. You can't fly with just moving one of your wings. You cannot just fly by only confronting or cowering away in just the order. That's what I understood, and life is so fascinating that whether you like it or not, chaotic and ordered dimensions will appear. Now, if a civilization is emotionally stable, so how I kind of am attempting to solve this problem, all right, so how would 8 billion beings kind of really build an advanced civilization? I have to ask myself, okay, I see the problem, I don't know the solution, but if I was to look at the problem, what solution, what attempt at a solution appears? And when I look at it, I realize that either a new language needs to develop, a new language where the way we look at the world, the inefficiency of it is erased. So what that means is, imagine somebody said like something years ago and then you see the person come in new and say something totally different, you know? So which meaning do you judge them by? So when you create something new, um, you're strangely simultaneously saying goodbye to the past. One of the most incredible sentences I've heard in this life was from a man named Papaji, and he said, "The past is past." He looked at a crowd of people in a satsang, and he's like, "The past is past. Any objections?" History does give us a kind of something to use, I guess. We see in history there has been civilizations that have kind of looked at the clouds and they saw gods walking over them, and there's been civilizations like us that look at the clouds and are like, we have a totally different interpretation of it. So what that means is one thing is very crucial. If we are living in a system where people are storytelling their existence to themselves in every experience they have, what that means is a story where the inefficiency is not there. So if I was to give an attempt to wondering how all these 8 billion human beings may get advanced, is that we need a new narrative, because ultimately we are like sight that is getting programmed by its experience, right? So the experience is eventually coming down to some story, right? Some sort of narrative. So the narrative of the inner realms and the outer realms. So people in their inner realms, they have many narratives, many ways they're a character in a story. But when they come and look at their civilization, your civilization doesn't give you a good narrative. You don't feel inspired to wake up. You may, if you in certain people, but I'm saying in the way the vast system is designed is that we are still our own laborers. Okay, so guys, my attention came on the chat section. So Ivan says every society is attempting a, a utopia. Every society is attempting utopia. Is one of the big um, drives of war, especially when we're talking about the Cold War. It's literally a war over whose idea of utopian society. Yeah, 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 yeah. So Ivan, I agree. It's like Leo Tolstoy's life purpose. Like a lot of Leo Tolstoy's writings, you see it. You know, there's this incredible. I don't remember from what, but Leo Tolstoy says it was like the Russian Tsar was saying to his people in some sense, like God is with us, and the Japanese in the Russo-Japanese wars, like the Japanese were also saying it's like the universe is with us. So yes, I do understand this sort of ethnocentric kind of subconscious positioning that different leaders of nations have in confrontation, right? So war does start in the minds of men, but the thing is, if war starts in the minds of men, perhaps peace can start there too. So Ivan, when you say the view of what a utopia is the problem, no one's going to have the same idea of what a utopia means. Yeah, that's the kind of need for a collective narrative, a new collective narrative, a new definition of the human position and humanity's position. But I think the utopia is an excuse. It can be an excuse for clueless power games, also. So what it is it's kind of like, I think there was something about Freud. Freud said people will believe in God as long as they're afraid of death. You know, he said, what was it, the death of a dream? I forget his book. But the fear of our personal inner realm makes us act in a certain way in the outer realm. So actually, I think Ivan, you're saying something very correct, that every person's view of the utopia is justifying their value system. So it's kind of like 8 billion people who see different things. How can they see the same thing to even be able to live in the same place? And the challenge comes if every person had to be like, we don't want to turn people into clones ideologically. At the same time, we want to have enough collective efficiency and stability. So I'm actually very curious. So Ivan, if you can build a bit more on what you're saying about this utopia. So 8 billion people. How do you get a perfect example? I got it. How do you get? Imagine there's 8 people in a room. They all have virtual reality headsets, and in that virtual reality headset, they're also in the same multiplayer game. Imagine. Or let me say it like this: imagine 8 people are in different, they have virtual reality goggles, and they each have their own experience, but they're all in the same room. So unless they take off their glasses, they will not see the same room. So what that means is, unless we move beyond our inner realms, beyond how we think, that means the death of the, oh my god, the death of, I'm getting too excited for no reason, but like it's kind of like we have to go through a metamorphosis from our individual realms, for our inner realms, into coming into the outer. The 8 billion people in that room need to take off their virtual reality goggles. They will see a new, you can say, value to their world, and then rebuild. So what it means is, it's kind of like life is an empty piece of paper and everybody is writing their own sentence, and they're only looking at their sentence. So if they could in some sense notice there is more than how life has been written for them, or how they have experienced life, then we at least find the empty page to start building the narrative. So, in some sense, I think what it means is people have to start acknowledging that they are not subjects. Then we won't be, then we'd come into a neutrality perhaps, where then a new subject, a new ethos of a civilization, collective inspiration for a civilization may arise, you know. Right, but awakening, how the awakening is, I find awakening is is not objective. So guys, this is something I gotta say. I do consider consciousness to have awakened, like suddenly, like no person is like suddenly that has an identity when they're born. Their identity, like after, like I don't know, by the age 11 or 12 or 14, like whatever psychologists say, at that point it seems the child becomes an individual to itself, right? So I think what it is like a new atmosphere of acknowledging the mind should just be introduced to the youth. The educational system needs to uh, do something here, you know. Um, so I think that's a question Dominic is asking Ivan. So Ivan, I'll let you respond to that. But Ivan, when you say rules are necessary to make a cohesive interaction platform, sure, you need rules to play chess. But the issue is that everybody is seeing their own chessboard. So we have to stop playing just the games of our self-obsessed kind of desired future, you know, and we have to kind of come into new dialogues all around the planet about what the self means. Like that would be incredible, no? All the children around the world suddenly set up into units of 3 or 7, 4 or 7, and then they go into dialogue, you know. I think units of 4 is better. Units of 4. I think children all around the world, in whatever society they are, have to get into groups of 4 and begin conceptualizing from where I like. It's as if I want what was happening in the school of Athens. I don't know, guys. Pretty much, we need uh, children in groups of 4, friends in groups of 4 in their environment, to begin kind of challenging each other's philosophies, like the School of Athens, with the realization of the co creative audience. So, what that means is if you have a theatrical play and you have different actors on this play on the stage, the audience receives all of them. So, guys, Dominic says, a ponder I have always. Um, always. Sorry, Dominic. I'm trying to read. A ponder I have always is we use the word free in the statement free will if the language itself has to be conditioned in all of us. Hence, maybe it would be a conditioned will. I mean, like, in my inner realms and my subjective realms and my subtler planes, I can have a totally different embodiment than my body. But in front of it, I think, guys, the thing is that we have free will, but we don't have a free world. We have a will as an extension of the world to behave in the world. But beyond that, the freedom of our will, if you were to kind of get my personal opinion on free will, I will tell you it is it's like you're standing between a portal, but one side of your face, the right side of your face, is on the other side of the portal, and the left side of your face is on a other side of a portal. Yes, guys. Pretty much that being between the portal, one side of with one eye it is seeing one universe, with another eye it's seeing another universe. That means if I choose to assume myself to be a materialistic being, I don't have pure free will. But if I consider myself to be a mind that's projecting a body, I am the free will. I am the will. That means literally it's like such a novel movement of manifestation that there's no nothing to refer it to. There are states of being that I say move beyond the language threshold. We can't literally, we become poets as we try to move beyond those clouds, fly beyond those clouds. This is why language is a technology where at most, it will reach towards divine nostalgia. That means you can't. I don't assume that language can contain the truth. But you'll be like, Mr. Within, but you're talking so much. You know? I'll be like, yes, because I still don't assume that what I'm saying is truth. I assume that there is access to realms, and we perceive, and these perceptions lay dormant in our inner realm until communicated. Incredible. So thanks, Hunter, for sharing that. Yeah. Language is the fingerprint of God. Yeah, definitely. I can see Terence McKenna saying that. You know, what an incredible sentence. So that means if we are speaking, we are under the finger of God. You know, if we're creatures of language, we're like right under that thumb. You know? Guys, I think it's just sensitivity to language. Um, we are evolving beyond our languages. That's what's happening. And the more we evolve beyond our languages, the more we begin to comprehend ourselves in the terms of energy and presence more than in the terms of one object compared to another object. It's like Alan Watts kind of said something incredible. He said if two spheres are spinning in an empty space, which sphere is spinning around which? So then it comes the free will ascribes the language to the objective phenomena. Okay. Guys, we can if people have they want if the audience wants to take the talk that way, we can talk about the extraterrestrial, but usually things that are really beyond the language threshold, you got to be playful when you enter the unknown. That means we can uh there's certain you won't believe it, but there's been times where I've given talks and I was about to vocalize a concept, and literally it was like there was this intuitive unauthorization. I don't know how to tell you. It was as if for a second, it was as if I knew that thought should not be said, and so I didn't say it. And it was weird because it felt like I was piloting my, like when I'm speaking my cellular planes, where I was piloting through my cellular planes. And as I was kind of piloting through my cellular planes, I reached a point where it was as if the wing of the plane is about to hit a truth that is of how would I say it? This is of course personal. What I'm saying, like it was as if there was a sort of turbulence in thought that it's like you see ahead, kind of like the storm, and so you navigate from it. So, guys, I'm gonna get back to the talk, but to the title. But I want to say these conversations we have in the chat section. I've created a specific group called School of Athens 2.0 on Facebook. The link is there. If anybody who wants to start dialogue there, that's the perfect place to type, because first of all, the dialogue remains there, and everybody else can in the group can see it. You know, so it's like join that Facebook group and the dialogues can continue there. But right now, tolerance brings global emotional stability. Guys, I want to read an entry for you from this book. I had a feeling to share it for some reason. It's called, it's entry 15 of the same book, The Source of Language. It's called Politics is the Market of Fear. Okay, this isn't on mute, is it? Okay. No. 3 quotes to start it off. Um, I wrote this in 2015, entry 15. Politics is the market of fear. Socrates, the secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. Terence McKenna, you want to reclaim your mind and get it out of the hands of the cultural engineers who want to turn you into a half-baked moron consuming all this trash that's being manufactured out of the bones of a dying world. And then there's a third quote by Abraham Lincoln. I walk slowly, but I never walk backward. That's this man's honesty echoes in history. So, guys, I'm going to read what my eyes saw in 2015. Politics is the market of fear. Politics is the market of fear. First sentence. An idea will suffer the consequence of its design unless through an innate, natural, intuitive depth, a truth beyond words has been realized about nature. We are more than madness of control-obsessed ideas. Do not continue lost in an illusion. Let every moment be a new finding of truth. If this world was your best friend, how would she talk to you in the silence of all that she is? For how long do words and symbols need to fight the empty page? Until we realize all phenomenon is a mirror reflecting the true nature of the one and only supreme consciousness? Like that was a question. I'll read again. So, for how long do words and symbols need to fight the empty page? Until we realize all the phenomena in a mirror reflecting the true nature of the one and only supreme consciousness? Why did Buddha sit under a tree? And why did the tree sit under an endless and limitless sky? If you're caught in identity games, you're required to wonder about who is playing this game, in quotations. I've written this. What is existential intelligence beyond acting names? That's a question. What is existential intelligence beyond acting names? Look deep within the cosmic eye. What is there more than who you are? Your natural presence is beyond the personality's discrimination. Our world is alive and our eyes unborn. A miracle is divine through the remembrance of almighty forgiveness. The value of deep conversations in life is the same value as clearing the smudges on the mirror of your eyes. We are beyond what we see. How else can we move on? That which changes is also aware and beyond that change. Your intelligence is beyond the stepping stones of temporal worlds that you cross. The source of language is always a moment of awareness beyond space and time. Thought is a curtain. It must be pulled to see beyond the light. The light of one's consciousness cannot be defined individually when it is present in an integratively dynamic collective system of intelligence. Can a finger only in the boundary of its definition possibly realize the cosmic body that it has always been connected to, beyond who you think you are? You and the universe are all that is. Could there be certain aspects of self that you have not paid attention to? Did you know your whole moment is in God's heaven? How shall the bodies crumble in the everlasting beauty of the mind's heaven? How can death be allowed when life was here first? Is this book about me or you or the universe? Can separation be the ego's rebellion against the grace of its formless origin? What makes rage speak nonsense? A quiet mind hears many things. The eyes of the unknown are not here to throw mysterious stones at knowledge. The study of your sight will lead out of language into a direct realization that this world is more than a story. Are you being a character? Who are you living for? Yourself or the dreams of others? What can make the mind realize that consciousness is bliss and existence is truth? Now, do you remember? So that's it, guys. We don't have to just study the world in front of our eyes. We have to study the worlds behind them too. So pretty much, I think if we wanted to kind of see it as if we were in a battlefield and what the commands towards an efficient civilization were, we're attributeless uh, moments of attention. Where our attention goes, there is energy for advancement. Ultimately, 8 billion people have to administer attention through their lifetime. They're already doing this for their own survival. Right now, if you're a human being that's alive and hearing this talk, that means your attention, with its capacity of intelligence, has managed to continue this far. Okay, so the attention, nobody is a stranger to their attention. You know, this is why Rumi says, "What you seek is seeking you." You'll realize kinda everything you're searching for is actually your ability of conception. When Meister Eckhart, 1,000 years ago, this Christian kind of Gnostic mystic priest, he's, he said, the same eyes I see God are the same eyes God sees me. What did that mean? That means the archetype for the unknown and the archetype in the known are originating in the same moment. You can say yoga is like remembering yourself as energy. Does energy have a story? Does energy have a personality? Does energy have incarnations? Does energy have kind of problems or solutions? No, it is just being. So, on some level, the inner realms take you towards how things are. The outer realms are how you kind of happen to the world. It's like, let me, sorry, let me say it like this. Um, Behind your eyes, you happen to the world. In front of your eyes, the world happens to you. When I go outside and I experience a different temperature, I didn't choose that temperature, you know? So it's like we always have free will, but we don't have ultimate free will. If we had ultimate free will, we would have to be the creator. That means the attention, right now, your attention is moving in a world that's here. Right, it's already physical. That tree is already outside when I go outside, right? So in some sense, there is a landscape pre-built, and our attention is moving through it. But when it comes to your inner realms, you are the world that your attention moves to. You are the attention. Like this is one of those kind of like, oh my God moments. I am God moments. You know? The person realizes that the condition that their psychology, the linguistic condition that their psychology has been dependent on due to child conditioning, is something that can just be observed and the person can totally newly walk anew. Do you know what I mean? That means failure is just the lack of endurance. Ultimately, continuity will lead somewhere. The attention leads somewhere, but there's also discretion and discrimination is required as well, you know. Language, I say it, I have a love and hate relationship with it. I love it when my attention externalizes through it. I dislike it when my attention internalizes through it. That means it's like it's the same sort of psychology. You find it's easier to laugh at others, but when others laugh at you, it's like it's not easy to laugh in that moment, you know. Language has made this creature conditioned into a psychology of absolutes. When that psychology of absolute is discovered, when you realize the true implication of that, I say the linguistic simulation, the language simulation. When I say simulation, we can't avoid emptiness in that word. So our archetypes are hovering between everything and nothing. All knowledge is hovering between known, unknown, visible, invisible, shaped, unshaped. And really, the whole mystery of consciousness that we find is because we have noticed there is an unshaped movement, attributeless movement. That attributeless movement is like the language that's, if Terence McKenna said language is the fingerprint of God, well, guess what? It's also the finger. It's not just the fingerprint. It's like the finger is still there on the print. The finger is, it's as if it's kind of like in yogic thought, the dude came and said, "Yo, enlightened man." Then the enlightened man appeared with his cape. It's like, enlightened man is here, you know? Your friendly neighborhood, enlightened man. I'm gonna attempt to make that film. I'm gonna make the film, enlightened man. Let's make him a superhero. A life beyond archetypes is a life beyond the container of an experience. That means language is like weather. Do you think the weather is truth? Do you think one moment when it's like sunny, it's gonna always remain sunny? No. So simply the ideological realms come and go. Simply the ability to observantly enjoy. I can totally see how people can go to the movies and watch a film and enjoy another person's imagination. But I wonder how many people just sit with a cup of tea doing nothing and just observing how their mind moves or what is moving. And then realizing that at some point the free will's ultimate purpose is to give value. So what it means is that the free will is like the same kind of free will we find with the steering wheel of a car. Yeah, you have free will, but you don't have the free will to fly in the air. So what it is in the yogic mindset of some guy coming and saying, "Hey man, what do I do with this ego?" Right? Or how do I understand this kind of God self or whatever? Right? So the enlightened guy, enlightened man looks at the guy and says, what is moving the ego? We are the unknown movement of language in a simulation, in a limited simulation of its own interpretation. That means behind our eyes, there could be such advanced thoughts just dwelling in our unconscious. And unless the consciousness reformats, how else? How else will the gates open? If the veil of thought is a curtain, then what can you do with the curtain? You either stare at it or you pull it. You either exist in this world or you live. You don't push aside the unknown and just bunker down in beliefs. I'm telling you, it becomes a heavy life. The more your beliefs are specific to your inner realm, it's kind of like the more you want the outer world to mimic your inner realm, rather than you realizing the inner realm changes. Sorry guys, I'm gonna answer this real quick. Sorry about that, guys. Had to handle that. I think I missed my train of thought there, but there is nothing more honorable and greater than creating a civilization where the future generations open their eyes and their psychology doesn't create resistance to participating in their kind of civilization. Ultimately, I would say civilization should be designed like a brain. Like, I noticed that we're moving into a technological age, and because we're moving in this technological age right now, we're experiencing the pre-transformation of culture, of of behavior. Human behavior gets really shifted when technology evolves. So if technology is exponentially growing, we can say the psychology of the future generations is really going to be influenced by the technologies they're using. When I say technologies, language is an inner technology, but the thing is outer technology. For example, the internet, computers, and whatnot. So I just want the past, the future generations to look back at now and be like, "Whoa, our ancestors were way ahead of their time." And so what I mean is that we have to consider not just the influence of technologies right now in a snapshot kind of mode, in a photograph kind of at the world situation, but to comprehend also the dynamism. And what that means is the world is never purely problematic, and it's not like there's only solutions. It's that because there's so much variables of change, eventually ordered solutions will move into chaos, and chaotic solutions will randomly become ordered. So what it is that we can say the new narrative that we as a civilization build over the planet will be kind of like a filter of chaotic and ordered transformations of various technologies. And if we consider language to be an inner technology, that's how cool is that? When you go speak to someone, it's as if they were a car and you saw underneath the hood, it would be the language that their mind is sequentially expressing, the vision behind their eyes. So that's why tolerance is crucial, because regardless of you thinking you have enemies in this life, there was this saying that said, I think it was by Sogyal Rinpoche. He said, unless you conquer your anger, your enemies will be inexhaustible. Unless the your inner realm is your observant of your inner realm no longer just obsessively attached to it, then you actually see the world, and you can say knowledge in that point doesn't become purely linguistic. Your experience realigns how you have been exposed to every concept. So do you remember the Limitless movie? In the Limitless movie, the dude took the pill and suddenly the neurology was working. So I find it's kind of reaching the same consequence, but in a different effect, where it's as if it's like just like in Photoshop, you bring down the opacity, you bring down the opacity of your ideological existence, and then knowledge moves, thoughts move in accordance to your experiences, you know? And so, really, on a rock in the middle of nowhere, we find ourselves now here. This kind of reaction to emptiness means really just have compassion for everyone, because every system seems to end. And if we choose not to see more than ourselves, then we have chosen not to see the world. So, guys, now my attention can come on the chat section to see what's going on. It's like reading this chat section feels like I'm reading like an Elder Scroll. So, um, okay, guys, I mean, so here's the thing, guys. I would classify, I would say there's no right or, guys, just relax. So I read what's going on. I think here's the thing, right? um, every person, based on their experiences, has a sort of model their intelligence imposes to conceive things. Now, because we don't have the same values as human beings, we can never come into full agreement. So we end up being playful with language, right? So it's kind of like when people are speaking, I see it more as like it's not a it's kind of like something outside of yourself which you are helping build, you know. So language is not, I say, cannot contain truth. Ultimately it's just a symbol, okay. So it's like all conversations can be turned into books and you'll be like, okay, it's just ink on a page. But how I see it is that this is the thing. So if I look at something and I'm like, what is this? If I choose to see an individual consciousness first, if I feel an individual is asking this, I am asking this in my from my subjective realm, okay? From my subjective realm, and usually the consequence of it is it's either it goes beyond the language threshold or it was never there. It's an oscillation between infinity and the void, you know. So that when it comes to the inner realms, but when it comes to like the outer realms, really it's as if like what is more the illusion is not the object, it is how we see the object. And really what it is imagine you're the first person on this earth. Imagine you were the first person and there was nothing. Imagine you were the creator of language. Anything you say would be that shape. So I'm just saying, eventually it comes to a point where we see, the Buddha even said this. It's like nothing new. The Buddha said objective phenomena is empty. We put the nature into it, you know? And also, we are a social creature. So what that means is also our psychology is dependent on individual collective, individual with the collective. We're like, why is the individual like this? We'll be like, okay, because the collective is like that. Why is the collective like that? Because the individual is like this. Do you see? So we can constantly move attention. But the thing is, the system has an unknown dimension. When you realize you're trying to solve this equation, but there is an unknown variable, and that unknown variable, there is nothing, no hint given about it, you know, so it means that you entertain your system of knowing in the moment. It's like, for example, I say the word apple, okay? Let's say I say the word apple. Now, okay, let's say I pause for like 10 minutes and then like I start speaking. Why does that word apple not stay with you? Why does it move on? Why was it like a cloud passing by? Do you know what I mean? So it's like linguistic truth requires a conditional attention to be static in all states. On some level, you know, it's so hilarious. You can give a response to the problem. It's like they get the person's like give an answer to the problem. The person's like the problem doesn't exist. That's my answer to it. So imagine it's like one way you find a solution, then the problem goes away. In another, you are not even considering the problem. You're not even considering that model. You know. So, anyways, guys, I don't know. I hope that was helpful. I don't know. Really, there is too much unknown. Robert M. Persick says something like, we take a handful of sand from this endless beach and we call it our awareness. And I'm just saying, let's just notice the sand is not the hand. So anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. Um, uh, Join the School of Athens 2.0, and feel free to kind of open up philosophical dialogue there, you know. So anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. Much blessings and namaste. And one thing I should say, there's no patience is a virtue, because in patience the observance fulfills itself. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Much blessings and namaste.